Hello and greetings everyone. Today I wanted to talk to you about Star Wars once again, and a topic that has been discussed in the fandom and the overall community for pretty much since the very inception of Star Wars, since the first movie came out, probably even before that with the early drafts. Now, with that being said, the topic is simply who is more powerful, the Jedi or the Sith. Now, there's many ways to view this, and I think the most important thing to get out of the way right away is how do you define power, because I think that's where the biggest fundamental difference between those two orders comes from. When Yoda said that the light side and dark side are equal in power, that is cosmically speaking, universally speaking, true. But for the Sith and the Jedi, they are not equal in power. Now, the first thing that may be important here is that Jedi view power as the ability to not being moved by the universe against your will. That's basically the Buddhist, Zen Buddhist idea of what being powerful means, which means that whatever happens in your life, you are not emotionally influenced by it. Whatever happens to your surroundings, you are not affected by that. For the Jedi, power means having such an inner peace that no matter what happens in the universe around you, you stay you and you have inner peace and calmness and you can't be moved against your will. You're basically an immovable mountain, and that your inner peace, your inner strength is so big that no matter what happens, if there is a war around you, you will still have your inner peace and inner calmness. That's the idea. Now, that the Jedi don't have that and never achieve that is something that is, I think, obvious throughout the media, because the Jedi always afraid of something happening. They are always trying to suppress their emotions and other things. So there is almost no Jedi I can think of that ever attained this level of inner peace, because if at least the council had this inner peace that they are striving for, they would not have interfered with the galaxy as they did. Now, with that being said, I think it's also important to realize that the Jedi often say about the Sith that their goal of perfection is unobtainable when they themselves can't obtain their true inner peace. Like, meh. That being said, again, power for Jedi means being immovable and not being affected by your surroundings. Meanwhile, the Sith's definition of power, which is, I think, most people's definition of power, is the ability to change and affect the world around you. So it's not being affected by the world around you, but implementing your will, imposing your will on your surrounding and being able to change your surroundings to your liking. It's basically what civilization does. Animals usually are one with nature because they simply react to their surroundings. They are affected by their surroundings. A mountain, as example, would not be affected by the surroundings. He would just be there no matter what happens. And for the Sith, it's the ability to change the surroundings to your liking. So build a village, as example. Artificial caves, if you wanna. So for the Sith, the power is something vastly different, and they pursue the ability to influence and change things around them. So with this definition alone, you will see that the Jedi pursue a completely different aspect of power than the Sith do, and those two will not go together well, because the Sith don't try to become immovable, so they won't achieve that goal and not come very far with that, which is why many Jedi view the Jedi as more powerful than the Sith. Meanwhile, the Sith view the Jedi as weak because the Jedi often don't even try to impose their will on their surroundings. They try to become harmonized with their surroundings. So that's why each order sees the other as weaker. Now, as for powers, we've briefly spoken about that most things that the dark side can do, the light side can do as well, and it's not so much the effects happening that are different, but it is the fuel source of those and the way to get there that is different. And there's some force powers that both sides frequently use. So that's that as well. Like the whole telekinetic abilities is something that both sides use. Now, with that out of the way, there is another level of power, and well, there's more levels of power. First of all, I'd like to go into power levels in terms of the ability to affect the galaxy on a mundane level. Now, obviously, we know that the Jedi are historically always in league with the Republic, but the Republic is not that much influenced by the Jedi. So while the Jedi pose as the Republic's military, the Republic's police force, at least in the later eras, well, also in the Old Republic era, basically the Jedi serve the Republic, and the Republic has a hold on the Jedi Order, which is something that many Jedi think is wrong, and I agree. But the Jedi are often commanded by the Republic. The Jedi are told where to strike by the Republic, where to go to war by the Republic, and while the Jedi often are generals within the Republic's military, they are still fighting the Republic's conflicts, not their own. This hasn't always been the case. See the Mandalorian Wars and the whole Revan thing, where the Jedi tried to stay out of it completely, which arguably was a wiser decision by the Jedi Order itself, for its own ideals, I mean. But other than that, the Jedi don't really have a say in how the Republic goes. They don't have a seat in the Senate, they're not voting on anything, they're not having representatives, and while they do pose as advisors to the Republic, they seem to have very little influence on where the Republic goes and the political decisions that the Republic has. The Jedi are very often very unhappy with how things are done in the Republic, yet they don't change it or don't even try to change it. Meanwhile, the Sith, when they have an empire, may it be Palpatine's empire or the old Republic Sith empire, the Sith rule this thing. The Sith are the de facto leaders of the empire. They tell the empire what to do, what the laws are, where to go, where to expand, where to fight, how economy is working, how law is working, what is and isn't legal or illegal. The Sith basically are the empire. They are the governing body of the empire, which we see in the Old Republic era with the Sith Council. The Sith Council has up to 12 seats, I think, and they rule very mundane areas of the empire as well. So they are the governing body of the empire, and obviously the emperor is the head of state. So they have a vastly greater level of power on a societal level, because they are the ones who decide what is happening on a day-to-day basis in their respective nation. So alone from that, joining up with the Sith gives you more power, because now you're not a servant that is somehow affiliated with the government, you are the government. So that's a big difference on a mundane level. Now on a combat level, there's also a vast difference to be made here. Now, I wouldn't say that the Jedi are per se weak in combat, because it depends on the era. If you look at the Old Republic, where the Jedi regularly fought and had combat experience against other lightsaber wielders, the power levels in direct combat were more or less matched. Like you see people like Satil Shan absolutely annihilating Darth Malgus. You have a lot of really cool fights with Darth, what's the name of Malgus' teacher? Vindican, I think, and Satil's master, and Satil's master obviously fights two Sith alone and takes out one of them. So yeah, in just combat abilities, it seems that the Jedi per se aren't any weaker than the Sith. In later eras, that changes, because obviously Palpatine takes on 4 Jedi Masters at the same time and annihilates 3 of them within the first seconds of the fight. See Sith apprentices like Maul absolutely devastating Jedi masters and stuff like that. So in the later eras that changes, but that's mostly because now only the most powerful Darksiders even become Sith and are counted as Sith, and that the Jedi basically lost the combat experience against lightsaber wielders and force users because they haven't fought those in 1,000 years. So for later levels, the combat experience is the combat power, the combat prowess is definitely on the side of the Sith, but I wouldn't say that is a general thing, because again, in times where we see fights and combat happening between Jedi and Sith, when both are trained and both use the Force in combat, they seem to be on overall pretty much the same power level. It also goes for ancient times, though that's a different story because ancient times is nuts in many ways. So in just combat prowess in a duel, I think that the Jedi and the Sith are pretty much on the same level overall, and it more comes down to the personal combat skill of an individual rather than the orders themselves. Also depends obviously on the equipment and so on and so forth, and I wouldn't go and give anyone a strict advantage here. Now if you talk just about lightsaber fighting, I would say for just the lightsabers, the Sith have a slight advantage, given that the red lightsabers have the unique property of being able to short out and short fuse other lightsabers on contact, which means that a Jedi might think they have blocked an attack with the lightsaber, and then the lightsaber just shuts off because it's short fused, and the red lightsaber goes through and cuts them in half or something. So in lore, that's something that red lightsabers can do. Sadly, I don't think we have ever seen an official depiction of that, but that's what red lightsabers are supposed to be able to do. And basically making your opponent's weapon fail in the mid of combat is an advantage that is definitely pretty strong. Also, the Sith tend to have better armor, but that is a slight tendency in Old Republic times. Now if you go ancient times, things change, because with Sith alchemy, the Sith created a lot of magically enchanted gear that like casts force push on impact or something like that. So the armor that the ancient Sith had, because it was enchanted and empowered by the Force, was vastly superior to anything that the ancient Jedi had. Similarly, the Sith warblades that the ancient Sith had were vastly superior to lightsabers and anything that the Jedi had, because they were imbued with the Force and had spells on them and were just more durable and so on and so forth. So for ancient times, I'd give the advantage equipment-wise to the Sith. Old Republic times and modern times, they are having maybe a slight advantage in the lightsaber thing that I mentioned. For the actual Force abilities now, here things can go a little bit, how do I say, haywire. Like if you look at Old Republic, Battle Meditation, which is a Jedi skill, is obviously extremely useful in a war, and it's definitely the one thing that keeps the Jedi in the game on a larger scale, because with Battle Meditation, their troops' coordination, morale, their power just increases by I think 2 times, 3 times, I don't know the exact numbers, but it basically makes their entire army more powerful, not just the individual Jedi. And obviously being able to cast buffs on your entire army is pretty darn powerful. The Sith don't have an equivalent to that really. Like they do have the ability to increase the anger or the hatred and stuff like that in soldiers serving them. So it's similar, but Battle Meditation seems to be superior in the lore. So that's an advantage that the Jedi have. Also, many would say that the Sith have a tactical advantage because they basically know more about the Jedi usually than the Jedi know about the Sith, which is basically just because there's many Jedi that go Sith later down, join the Sith later on, and they obviously bring the knowledge about the Jedi with them. Meanwhile, there's very, very few Sith that join up with the Jedi later. And so the Jedi don't have as much of an understanding. Also, the Jedi are often prohibited and inhibited from studying the dark side or the Sith, because they fear that if you see the truth, you join the Sith. So, and the Sith, meanwhile, are encouraged to study the light side, and the Jedi as a study of their opponents. So, from a tactical point of view, I think the Sith have an advantage. Now, if you go by armies, I would say that the Sith army and the Jedi army are again in numbers, in equipment, like we are speaking the normal soldiers now, in pretty much everything, again, pretty much equal, which is why conflicts on the galactic scale between the Sith Empire and the Republic last so long, because they are more or less on the same page power-wise. And the Sith might have the slight advantage that due to them having a stronger grip on their population, on their society, the Sith have the ability to recruit forcefully. I don't think they have used it all that much, but they could. So they have more of a emergency backup system. Due to them having more order in their own lines, also means that they don't have to use troops to enforce, the law and go after criminals and stuff like that, and they're not as easily they're not as easy to infiltrate by spies and such. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It does, and it does happen a lot, but it's easier in the Republic that doesn't have as tight a grip on how things are run. It's easier to make up a cover-up story and just be there. Other way around, more difficult, can still happen though. Now, from a pure force perspective, as said, battle meditation is absolutely amazing, but there's also the ability to mass heal, which is very, very useful in combat and on the battlefield. And the Sith, they don't really have all that much that apply to other people other than yourself, like not in terms of empowering, buffing your own army. That's something that the Jedi can do. They can heal their own army. They have abilities to shield their own army. They have abilities to create force barriers, to create cover out of nothing and stuff like that. So on a army level, I'd give us an advantage to the Jedi because they have the buffs and the healing spells, basically. Now the Sith, however, do have something else. They have the ability to debuff entire armies with Force Panic and Force, what is called, Plague, I think. They have the ability to mind control, influence, and just debuff large groups of enemies. So with Force Panic, you can basically make your opponent's army rout and flee and run for their lives from a single individual, by the way. So those debuffs are pretty hard too, though the Jedi can counter that with, say, battle meditation, where the army becomes immune to such debuffs. So army-wise, slight advantage to the Jedi, in my opinion. On a personal level, on a 1v1 level, I'd actually give the Sith the advantage because they simply have powers that are aimed at disabling your opponent and defeating them in a quick way with overwhelming power. And I'm not just speaking about Force Lightning and stuff like that. I'm talking about, say, pyrokinesis or the cryokinesis, the ability to hurl flamethrowers and fireballs and icicles and hailstorms and whatnot at your opponent, which can be obviously be super destructive. But we are also talking about I don't know the exact name of the power, the gaze of hatred or death gaze or something like that, where Sith literally just stare at you and you die. Now that's a power that's rare among the Sith, to be fair, but I mean, you just have to look someone in the eyes and they die. That's pretty powerful. Also, the Sith have Force Crush, which means that they can literally crush your heart. Force Choke is supposed to crush your windpipe. Same idea on a smaller scale. The Sith have a lot of ways to influence the force around you to make combat much tougher for you. They can debuff you, and I think when it comes to buff, they are on equal footing once again, because the Sith absolutely have buffs to enhance themselves. They are just not applicable on a large scale. They're just for the individual. Like with Force Rage, they basically gain enhanced endurance, enhanced attack power, enhanced speed, and so on and so forth. They have what's called Force Drain, where they can take the life force of their opponent and heal their own wounds with that. So they can heal, it's just a different mechanic basically. And on a 1v1 level, I'd give the advantage to the Sith, because the Sith simply have offensive powers that the Jedi don't. Now, in terms of morals, how you win a fight, I think the Sith have a big advantage over the Jedi, because the Jedi are restricting themselves. Now, I'm not saying that the Sith aren't restricting themselves. That depends on the era, because Old Republic and Ancient Sith actually did adhere to honor, and they wouldn't use intrigue or what's it called, manipulation, or behind the scenes stuff, or trickery, or dirty tricks to defeat their opponent. They wouldn't do that, because in their mind, in the Sith philosophy, if you can't overpower an opponent in a fair fight, you are weaker and deserve to lose. So backstabbing and stuff like that, or really dirty tricks, are out of the picture, because the Ancient Sith and the Old Republic Sith, to a lesser degree, really honored, really valued honor, and were really big into the whole idea of overpowering your opponent head on, no dirty tricks. So that obviously changed with the Rule of Two Sith, who are all about dirty tricks to defeat their enemies, which would give you an advantage, because if you're willing to use anything against your opponent, you have more at your arsenal, and your opponent is more likely to be surprised by what you're doing. Now, with that out of the way, the main issue that those two philosophies have is that the Jedi train their combatants to last as long as they can in combat, and train them to disable their opponent without hurting or killing their opponent, if possible at all. Like, they focus a lot on disarming techniques, as in sometimes literally cutting hands off and stuff, or cutting your feet off. They try to put you in a stasis, or in a state where you can't fight anymore but are still alive. Meanwhile, the Sith learn how to end your opponent in the quickest, most efficient way they can. Sometimes they go sadistic and try to play with their opponent, which would put them at a disadvantage, because that can backfire. But usually the Sith are more about finishing fights quickly and efficiently, which obviously is a big ideological advantage in combat. So in terms of potential force powers, we have a clear winner, I think, because the Sith, they can explode star systems just with the Force. They can annihilate planets with just the Force. They can destroy entire fleets of starships with just the Force. The Jedi have never been seen to do anything anywhere near that. The Sith can cause natural catastrophes like earthquakes and hailstorms and blizzards that wipe out entire armies. The Jedi have never been seen to utilize anything like that, well, because it goes against the light side and their philosophy. But I think if we look at what the Sith achieved with Force powers and what the Jedi achieved with Force powers, we have a clear winner with the Sith. Also, like technology, like Force enhanced technology, like the Thought Bomb, all of that, like the Sith Warblades, the Starforge and stuff like that, that's all dark side of technology, and with the exception of the Starforge, all Sith technology. So yeah, I'd say that we have a clear winner in that area. As for overall power, I think also the Sith win, because if you look at galactic history, every single time in galactic history that the Jedi were nearly wiped out and drove near extinction, it was the Sith doing that to the Jedi. Every time the Sith were driven near extinction and almost wiped out, it was also the Sith doing that. So on the galactic scale, the Jedi have never won a serious war against the Sith. They have never won any significant real big battle against, I mean, General Hoth may be a little bit of a, not really. I mean, Exar Kun was a big loss for the Sith, but come on, you had like 1,000 Jedi against one guy, and the one guy was still capable to keep them at bay. Or you have Tula Kord, who single-handedly drove through entire armies. So yeah, I think you have a clear winner in that regard with the Sith. Now, in overall power, galactic history-wise, every time the Sith were almost wiped out, it was also the Sith doing that. So, by achievements, I'd also give this to the Sith. Now, I think I've gone on long enough on this topic. I thank you for watching, wish you a wonderful day, and may the Force be with you.